Hey, how you doing? Sorry I started a little later than usual. So today it's gonna be another like calm, like chill drawing stream. So today it's gonna be two things. Today it's gonna be another one of my Inktober, but it's also gonna be a request from one of my close friends and watchers here. So just to keep you all up to date. So I have started not excuse me. Hey Shay, glad to see you in. Glad to see you dropped in. So this year, it's not exactly Inktober. I'm doing a thing called Drawtober. So basically, it's kind of a similar thing, but I'm not exactly going to be sticking to solely just like pen and ink this time. So far I've done day one for cosplay, as I have as a PJ, as Trump from DPC. I have that. Day two, I chose to do boa. In this case, it was a rainbow boa. That would have been a lot of fun. It's like see these first two rounds, I decided to do a little bit more. So I'd be a little more colorful than I normally would. And day three, that's a beard. So I had to keep something a little bit simpler for yesterday. So for today is going to be detective. And who I decided to do for today for detectives, I decided to do one of my friends, Spiffy's character, because he has a detective character named Rowan. So I'll actually be drawing him for today. So you can see I've already kind of started like lightly sketching out his posture. And I figure he's very. The thing about Rowan, he's supposed to be very gruff but very experiential like detective. So he's a little kind of on the rounder side. So let me just kind of like get his overall gesture going here. Let me have a bit for his snout. Let me see, make sure I have enough space for that. Also, let me see. So I think what I'm gonna do, let me just kind of start off, with his snout here. Let me get his little nose. Let me get the bottom of his snout here. Let me, of course, he has a small. Smile here. And of course, as he get his actual, like, his facial hair. The cool thing about Spiffy's character, like, since a lot of them are wolves, since I normally don't draw animal characters that often, they're really fun to do. And the idea with him, he's kind of like a very aggressive. Yeah, he's definitely kind of a very rough, kind of gruff type of character, but at the same time, he's a guy who's really good at what he does, and very intelligent. So let me bring the eyes a little bit further apart. And so in fact, let me make sure I have room for his ears, because I want to make sure he still has room for those. In fact, let me bring his tufts ears out a little bit more. Let me get his little tufts of hair at the very top. Because I know Spiffy, she had showed me some of this concept art that he has, and he has very kind of like long, kind of shaggy almost hair. Almost like a mullet in a way too, which is actually kind of neat. Because hair is always fun to do. Because I know hair don't do it that often, but when I try to do, I try to be really have fun with it. And so let me bring that out. I figured because I kind of want his shaggy to kind of curl down like just below his eyes. No, just above his eyes. At the same time, I still want to make sure he has room, for room for his ears. And so, of course, like a detective, especially an old school detective, he's got that large like trench coat. It is gonna be a green trench coat, but of course, as far as coloring it, that won't come until much later. So he's got these large lapels. In fact, let me kind of bring it down just a bit more, because usually trench coats tend to go down, further down towards the knee, hang towards the legs. And the way he described it on me, you know, as being this character who's like a really big detective, but he's kind of led stuff. I kind of saw him as more like a Chief Wiggum-like character from Simpsons. In probably maybe the early seasons where, you know, Wiggum was definitely a lot more competent. Although from what he described, you know, Rowan's definitely seems like he's definitely more competent than him. And so I figured here I could have one with like a magnifying glass. Here. Yeah, I meant to start the stream a little early, but I had a few errands I had to take care of. But you know what? I'm here now, so I figure I wanted to do it better late than never. In fact, for a moment, I almost considered probably like save it for tomorrow. But of course, I wasn't sure how tomorrow was gonna play out because I figured like some things might come up. In fact, let me make this back just a little smaller. I don't need to be that big. Let me kind of get the lapels of his shoulders here. Also, let me get the part where his tie, because he's got his vest. Let me get the bit where his tie is. Of course, come down to where his pants are. Of course, he's got these very like large boots. He's definitely more, you know, kind of a gruff, almost has like this rough like Sherlock Holmes things going on. So this is kind of one reason why I was kind of excited to do this too, because it's been a while since I've drawn any like detective-like characters. Because I think the last time I did something was either I think when I tried drawing Sherlock, or when I tried drawing what's that what character's name? I'm trying to think like he's a character from a book. Harry Dresden, that's his name. And Harry Dresden, that from the Dresden Files, and that one, that character was really more a magician who also has to be a detective. And I need to get around to checking out that series again because it had a pretty interesting concept. Because like, it's fantasy, but it's set in a sci-fi setting, and the whole thing is that, you know, he's in a world that's very sci-fi technology advanced, that's set in the future, but he's one of the few places people left that actually uses like actual magic. So one of these days I need to get back and actually checking it out because, and I just thought about it, you know, just now because, you know, even Dresden, he kind of had that very gruff personality to him. Let me bring bring the sleeves out a bit more. I know in other pictures here's Spiffy showing me he normally has a gun as well, and I thought about doing that here, but I wasn't sure how to do it because I didn't want to know if I want to hold on the side, or if I want to have a magnifying glass. I think I go to magnifying glass because normally, because not only when you think of detectives, you do think of having them guns, but you do think of having guns, but you also think of having like magnifying glasses as well. Okay, so that's looking all right. That's looking pretty good. So now let me like kind of start refining this sketch just a bit more. Yeah, I think I'll spend a little more time on his face because that's the thing. I really want to make sure I get the face right, especially here because I want to get the idea capture. With part of his character is that like even though he's a very gruff, character, and his parents was a character where he's a little bit out of shape. And he's not as prime as he used to be. There's still that intelligence there. There's still that person who's good at his profession and who knows what he's doing too. I think I'll have his other ear kind of caught behind the flick of his hair. Yeah. Hey, Brendan Barney. Glad you dropped in. Good to see you. Yes, yeah. Once again, I've only got my measure this morning. I really love how you did Manny. I really enjoyed how you did this. Yeah, this is actually something I'm doing for Spiffy on one of his characters. Actually, no, actually, this is actually not Henry. This is one of the detective character on Rowan. Rowan is actually kind of one of the detectives from one of his series. So he asked his one to catch his draw that for him. And in return, I know he said he mentioned he was gonna do Gino, one of the new characters I created. For those who probably weren't here for one of the last streams I did, actually I don't know. Come think, I don't know if I did him here. In fact, let me get it for just one moment. Give me just more. Where did I put that book? Where did I put it? Yeah, stand by, guys. I just had it just a few moments ago. Yeah, here we go. So, it's really more of a trade. It's a trade. So one of the things one of the characters I did, like about a week or two ago, is that I did this new character, Gene. Well, it's a character I had for a while. It's the chef that happens to be a sheriff. And for a while I didn't decide what name I would give him. So finally I ended up giving the name Gino. Because for some reason Gino just kind of fit for him. And as we were kind of like talking about what characters we want to do, he said he'd definitely do one of Gino. I was like, that'd be wonderful. I get to do one of his characters. He gets to do one of mine. So yeah, yeah. Now also for Henry, now I definitely would like kind of do. Yeah. Oh yeah. Most definitely. Now definitely for Henry, definitely wouldn't mind kind of doing one again of him one of these days. Yeah. So I think let me just kind of actually get around the eyes over here because I know he's kind. He's kind of like some like bags underneath his eyes because he's definitely an older guy. So let me just kind of bring the coats down a bit more, his little coattails. And some of you could probably see, hey, maybe some point you could try to tell me, okay. Oh yeah, most definitely. I had a feeling like once you were done with man, once I did yours, and once you did with Manny, I was gonna tackle some of the other ones later on down the line. So that's definitely something we'll actually get a chance to do when we get the chance. And what was else I was going to mention? What was it? Let me just kind of go against the curve as magnifying glass. I made it a little bit smaller because I want to make sure you still have room to kind of see, like see some of his face here. Because I don't want to be too obscured, by his face. So let me get the coattails here. Let me just kind of bring these down a bit more. Let Let me add little buttons on his trench coat. Of course, let's get his vest. I'm also supposed to make a pitch bug for my series. Oh, wonderful! That's good. Now we're gonna have it all in one document. That's something I need to get around to doing for some of my characters, cause So basically, like what I got going on for just to kind of keep making a quick detour back to Gino here. Basic story I got going on for him is that he's basically like story he's actually first used to the old country, he's from Italy, and he decides to come to America, become a famous chef. But through a series of events and mishaps, he ends up becoming a sheriff in the Wild West. And I thought that maybe being more kind of like an adventure type of comedy type of deal. Yeah, and the thing is, I don't really have a lot of character because I mainly just have two as of right now. It's just him and another character, Earl. Earl's actually one of the cowboys he actually meets out in the West, and basically kind of teaches as far as living out in the West, as far as surviving out there, and they end up becoming like not only partners but really great friends in the long run. So they're the two main characters, that are gonna be part of the story, but I still need to go and actually kind of filling out more because there's other characters I've had in mind as far as putting in there, but I haven't really like set everything in just yet. And see, that's great that you got at least 50. See, now you got a lot to work with, so you have a good variety show of like different characters you can pick from, and knowing what to use like for each story. That is really cool. So let me kind of get his. So let me kind of go get his boots. Let me kind of like refine these a bit more. Yeah, I plan to make more character expressions next week. Oh, cool. So you think like I'm gonna do like kind of like expression type model, kind of like a model sheet in a way? Because I know that's something I used to do for a little while. Anytime I started making new characters, or even if I was just like want to practice game, if I want to get better at drawing faces in general, I would practice like drawing like different expressions. Because sometimes what I would do is like I would try drawing to and see how it looks on a character. And of course, because sometimes like once you have a character that you've already liked and you've already kind of fully formed, you start actually kind of seeing how those certain characters look on those characters. You also can see like which ones what they do. Because like say for example, they're more of a grumpier character. If they smile, they're probably not gonna have like a big cheery smile. They might have one that's a little more subtle, or they probably just wouldn't smile at all. Versus with someone who's very happy, if you see them angry, they may not have one that's really angry, or you make a rule where you don't show it side of them that often. Yeah. All right. So that looks good. So now let me go with my pen and start actually refining him. So let me get my ballpoint pen. Give me just one moment. All right. Here we go. Tend to do expressions and drawings. Other times to give a few picture templates of facial references. Yeah, that's cool. That's what I tend to do a lot too. Just having them as exercises to see, like how how you just practice drawing different expressions because like some expressions can be kind of hard to do, and also then it depends on what angle that the character is in too. Because like I just found like when you have like a 3/4 view or in the front, they're always easy. A lot of times I tend to get a little bit more tricky if I'm doing it, say, from an angle like looking at it from above, looking at it from the bottom. I know one thing I've been trying to do a lot more. I've been trying to practice on actually drawing expressions from a side profile, because I feel like that's something I haven't, really practiced that much as far as drawing characters from a side profile view. All right, so let me go start, with his little nose here. In fact, give me just one moment to check on something for a brief moment. Alright, there we go, I'm back. So let me kind of get his nose. I know wolf nose, since there's ones can be pointed, I'm gonna have a It's a round nose, but it's gonna be kind of pointed too. Let me kind of get his little snout. I figure it's gonna have like 2 little ridges. And also, with him, Henry, he's got very, no, excuse me, not Henry, excuse me, Rowan, he's got very thick eyebrows. He's got very thick eyebrows, and they're very bushy. It took me a while to get certain characters and profiles down correctly, like Frank Wolf, and even because they're more complicated. Or I can imagine, especially, like since wolves, they tend to have, especially depending on characters, since they have like that long snout, because of course you gotta make sure you turn different angles, because they can look really long, look at it from the side, but it can look really different, look at it from the front. Oops, sorry, I hit the camera for a moment. So they can, so also you gotta count like how it looks from different angles. So I figured I would have kind of more of like a top, yeah, almost like a weird person, but just wanted to show you like behind these eyes, like even though he's technically considered like past his prime, like he's still very skilled. There's still that instinct that he has is still there. So let me get his little ears. There we go. I think the hardest angles I think is probably either like side profiles, and probably say one where if a character is probably looking up or like looking down. Let's get his little hair. I think I'll have his hair be kind of scruffy. Alright, that looks pretty good. Pretty good. Let me just kind of like bring. I get his little mane of hair because it comes down because he kind of like a mullet thing which is going on, which is pretty cool. I don't know, for some reason when it comes to hair, like drawing long hair is always like really fun to do. We got long hair, because obviously if you got long hair, there's a lot more you can really do with it. Let me actually bring this snout down. Oh, that's true. I almost forgot. He does have very bushy eyebrows. And also, I think, using bushy eyebrows, they're all with eyebrows. Like, since they're very expressive. Expressions. Oh, I saw what you did. Expressions. I saw what you said in Discord. Expressions. I even think about doing. I didn't even think about doing that. Actually doing like screenshots of just different expressions. I know like I would study like different cartoons and different like shows, and I would study just to see like you'll see what I like about their designs. I never thought about doing one just for expressions though. But that's actually a pretty cool idea, guy though. The jump shot, the face of a thug. Yeah, I definitely got that just when kind of looking at it where he still has that what's the word I'm looking for? He has that demeanor about them where he's still pretty gentle despite his appearance. So let me kind of go get this little magnifying glass here. See, so let me get started. I figured for here, like, I guess since he's an older type, maybe like some of his material may not be. I was like, I figured maybe mine's a little crack, like his magnifying glass. But for him, like, since he's good at what he does, it doesn't really matter if they're cracked or not. He knows how to really work with what he has. Most of the series Joanna because the ballet one. I think Oh, yeah, let's say. In fact, I think I did see the most recent one. That recent one you did not too long ago. It looks really good. I really liked it. Yeah, it was my fault because it looked kind of thick, because it looked kind of odd there for a moment. Yeah, so I wanted to kind of get the like smooth out the edges just a little bit more too, so it looks more like an actual magnifying glass. Because to be honest, there have been some instances where I've drawn Michaels and end up looking more like and look like magnifying glass. They looked really big. I think I've done some in the past where they accidentally look like lollipops. And so finally, I actually got to the point where as I was drawing, I figured myself, okay, man, I actually start looking up what actual microphones look like. So that way, when I do draw them like from memory, they'll actually look like them. Because even when if I'm been drawing cartoons, like every now and then I do like the look at photo references, just to just kind of at least look and see like what their actual thing looks like. And then sometimes, like if I go for different like shows and cartoons that I watch, I'll look at them as well just to see, like how the artists on those shows, see how they stylize them. Because simplifying and stylizing like certain items, that's a craft in itself. Oh yeah, most definitely. And of course, that's why I always make sure I work pretty rough when I start, because you never know when doing a sketch. You just never know like if you'll stick with the main idea you start out with, or if you want to do something different. But also that's why I tend to do like little thumbnail sketches, because if you're doing thumbnail sketches, of course, like you can try different poses, see what works. You can put out notes and decide what you want to do for the final sketch. That way, when you do the actual final sketch for here, there's a lot less like figuring out of what you're gonna do, and a lot less redoing. Even though sometimes it's unavoidable. Sometimes if the pose is not working, you can just redo the whole thing, or just start over entirely. And sometimes that's what you got to do. Let me do the collar of his trench coat here, at least the sleeve of it. I know I mentioned before, like I tend to do a lot of my sketches like in such like straight in ballpoint pen. I know for here I'm using like red pencil because red pencil, at least I can erase if things don't look too good. And usually if I'm doing something that's gonna be a little bit more polished and I'm not a little more polished and I really want to get proportions right, I'll use like pencil. But like, if there's other sketches where I'm not really too concerned like how it's gonna turn out, I just want to try to get the idea out and just see how it looks, then I'll just use like straight in pen. But for something like this, I'm definitely always gonna use like pencil. So let me get his boots. Let's see. Yeah, I tend to use it for sketching, usually when there's more than two sides on screen, when you draw a costume or a character. I tend to do that a lot too, and a lot of times I'll use either like a red like I use here, or I'll use blue, because at least when using a light blue, like if for whatever reason if I have to scan it in, light blue doesn't really show up when you scan it in. Although I do need to think not to try doing a technique I know that you showed me through Discord where you'll use different colored lines if you have multiple characters on the screen, which I never thought about trying it that way, but that's something I might consider doing in the future if I do another picture with multiple characters, because whenever I do if I do like pictures that have like 11 characters on there, like for some reason like usually like the longest part for me to do is usually like just the drafting stage, the playing stage, because usually once I have all the characters like in place, like drawing there's no problem, but it's just planning them out as far as like what character goes where, understanding the composition, and really just making sure that like the whole piece is just readable, it doesn't feel too cluttered. Like that kind of takes the longest to really, yeah, appreciate it. That's the longest that really takes a while to actually really get right. 'Cause I know, for example, I did this one picture I did with I think with Van Meg, I think it was the Warners, with Yakko, Wacko, and Dot, with Scratch and Sniff, with Ralph the Guard and Pink and the Brain. I have them all in the same pictures, but it took me a long time to kind of figure out a range to where you could see all of them, but the whole thing didn't seem cluttered. Because I always feel that even if you have a lot of stuff going on screen, you still want to make sure that everything's arranged in a way to where it feels it's easy on the eyes, and you're not having to kind of like figure out kind of like what's going on, even if even if it ends up being a scene where there is a lot going on. And maybe he has some scuff marks. Shaggy may have some scuff marks here and there. They'll have some of these creases around the shoe since it is a very tight fitting suit. Let me see if I can get his boots for a moment. For character instruction, I now draw blue and red guidelines, black to design a character. I use green for action lines. Oh, neat. I never would have thought about it trying like that. That actually works really nice too. Because I remember there was a time I used to do something kind of similar to that where I would use different colors. I think I would use basically a lot of times what I would do if I was more positive, I would use say maybe like a blue or a red pen like for like the rough sketch. I would use just regular pencil. I use a regular pencil like for a refined sketch, and then I'd go over with just black pen. But the thing is, I never would have thought about using like a different like pencil for an action line. But that's actually really good though, because I at least kind of like break everything down so everything's all blending together. Because sometimes yeah, and usually like getting that action line, that's something you want to make sure you have set like right from the beginning, because you'll make sure you have a good action line. Also, make sure you have a good gesture drawing. Like, that's gonna help kind of like determine what type of movement you want in your pose and your character as well, because you want to make them kind of feel kind of alive. I think his shoes are probably kind of worn, because he's probably used to having to kind of walk around with them a lot. Yeah, usually something like it's like an action line. Yeah, that's something you want to do like at the very beginning. Now there have been some instances where I've done it like midway through a sketch, but like usually the beginning is the best time to do it, because that's when you can at least, because I was determining like how your move was gonna be, the movement of your piece is going to be, versus trying to figure it out, while you're actually drawing it. Let me bring that shagginess down just a bit more here too. Alright, I think that looks pretty good. So I think now we can go into the coloring stage. So let me get my pencils for a brief moment. Give me just one moment. So I think what I will do is I'm gonna start off, kind of coloring, his green trench coat. Since that's like a big part, of his design. Yeah, usually, like, once I kind of pick up a medium, I kind of try to do as much as I can, with that medium before I move on to the next thing in the next medium. Like say for example, if I start off, with pencil, I try to do as much as I can with pencil before I move off to using something, with pen. And of course, once I'm done with moving on my stuff in pen, then I can move on to something that's more to something, with a color pencil or marker. And also, if I do more polish, if I do stuff, with marker, usually like what I'll do is that I'll just lay on the base colors and markers first, and then I'll probably go over, shading, with actual pencil later on the line, or just use more markers. Like I know in the beginning, I used to do a lot more where I used to do with just marker, but then I started incorporating pen. Now I tend to do a mixture of both, where I'll probably lay down my base colors. I'll probably go down to shadows, with pencil, and then I'll probably go back, markers again to kind of really blend out like those pencil marks I made. Because I figure that combination of texture between the marker and pencil, I think it adds a nice look to it. And you see, as I'm kind of going in ballpoint, man, I'm being very particular. I'm just kind of going in like single strokes to make sure they're all in one direction before I start kind of like evening out, before cross hatching. Pretty good. Yeah, nowadays, my two big of our series are both right inside our American Dad and Timon and Pumbaa. Yeah, I could definitely see it. I could definitely see it more in the latter with Timon and Pumbaa because that was such a very very kind of like loose and zany show. And Looney Tunes, that's the exact too. Oh yeah, Looney Tunes. That's a big influence. A lot of my stuff. Looney Tunes, SpongeBob. Yeah, all of those have always been great. Oh, that's really nice to hear. Like Timon and Pumbaa being mentioned because I know when it comes to like the old school like Toon Disney like Disney Afternoon like shows that came out from that period like. Yeah, you hear people mention, because say, Little Mermaid. You hear people say Aladdin. You hear them mention like DuckTales. And those other shows, and although I find it good and they're great, I rarely hear people mention Timon and Pumbaa that often, which is a shame because it's a really great it's a really great show. It's funny, it's got a good funny, and even though like the tone of it's very different from like say the movies, I think it works because of course like since it's centered around two of the more comedic relief characters, you kind of want that tone, and also like. Since it wasn't set specifically just in the Pride Lands like originally was, like they have them living like in different areas, so it gave them more chance to kind of really like try different stories and just letting those characters like do their thing within each setting. And a lot of times those are usually like those are the best type of like cartoon shows where you can put like a certain character in any scenario or any setting, and comedy will pretty much just kind of just write themselves. And it lasts for a good while too. I think it lasts. I think for about three. I think it lasts like 3-4 seasons if I recall. Because I remember. Let me look that real quick. Because I remember it lasted for a good while. Because I vaguely remember like catching it on TV back when it was new. Like it wasn't until I think like much later. I think once it was on Toon Disney, then become like Disney XD. When I saw it in reruns, I really sat down to watch it because that's the thing about me is like when it came to a lot of those Disney shows, like I really didn't get around to kind of like really seeing them until like much later on when once we got access to the channel, but also when a lot of those channels started getting phased out for the newer shows. Okay, here Lion King, Timon and Pumbaa. It aired from September 8th, 1995, December 24th, 1999. Okay, so that's about 6, 7, 8, 9. It's about 4 years. Okay. Yeah, Studio B did the pre-production for the third season. I think I do remember hearing about that. Because a lot of the I think the shows have pretty distinct looks. I know the first two scenes are because it kind of has style like similar to how the original movie, how the movies look. But of course, but I think once the third scene come in, that had more like a looser style, which looked great for a lot of those later shows. And I think I can't remember, did both voice guys? Yeah, I think for Timon Nathan Lane pretty much did him for all. No, I think he had two voice instructors. I think for Timon Nathan Lane, his original voice, he did him for a lot of the early episodes. And I think for season one, I think for Quentin Flynn was another guy. He took over for the rest of season one, and another guy, Kevin Sean, he did him for like the last two seasons. And I gotta say, like those last two, or just Quentin Flynn, Kevin Sean, they did a great job like imitating yeah, different dudes, different characters. But I gotta say, like Sean and Flynn, they actually did a pretty good job, with those characters. Honestly, it wasn't until much years later that I knew that's what voice actors that was Timon. Because in fact, even right now, I looking up, apparently Neil Sean, he later voiced by Timon's voice in The Lion Guard. See, I didn't even know that. Well, of course, like for Puma, he's pretty much got the same voice as Ernie Sabella. He's pretty much done him for like for the movies, but also the entire show too. Yeah, Nathan did the first 10 episodes. That's right. But that I recall. I think when I'm looking back and recalling some of the show, like you can sort of kind of tell because with Nathan Lane, he does a very specific cadence that only he can do, and while you have other imitators that can capture his style, there's always something where you can never quite get it because that's the thing. You have like characters and people who have very distinct voices. Like you can have a lot of imitators, but you can always tell when it's not really them, but someone who does a really good job, like imitating them and capturing them their cadence. Because in fact, I think that whole show had a pretty good like voice cast. Of course, shows him, Ernie Sabala. In fact, quite a good number of voice actors from the original Lion King came back for that. Because I know like Rafiki, because I know he was in there for a couple of episodes. Robert Gilman, he came back for him. I think most of the guys most of what that's for the hyenas, they came back. No, actually, I think they got different ones. No, that's right. If I remember now, I think for the hyenas, only Jim Cummings, because Jim Cummings did Ed. He only did Ed. He came back. 'Cause I know in the original movie there was Whoopi Goldberg and Cheech Marin. They did him in the movies, but later on when the show came out, Tress MacNeille and Rob Paulson, they took over for them. And for Simba came back a few times too. He was actually voiced by Cam Clark in his appearance. And Cam Clark, I'm surprised I haven't really seen a lot, like Disney related stuff because he's always been a really pretty good voice actor. But he pops up in so many stuff because he'll be in things for Disney, but he'll also be in a lot of stuff what's that video series? For like Golden Films like video series, he'll be doing like side characters and those type of videos, but then he'll do like dubs for anime, like Akira, and like he just kind of pops up in your areas, so I know him. So yeah, in fact, now just talking about it, that makes me kind of want to give it a rewatch one of these days. Okay, where was I? So let me kind of like just add a little more texture to his suit. Let me just kind of darken in the his coattails a bit more. When you lapel, let me just say. Alright, that looks good. So what else do I add next? If I can do that, what else can I do? I could just go over. I think I'll go over a little bit of this light green I have in his other pen. So I'm not going to use too much because it's kind of a yellowish green. I really don't want to have it too much of that yellowish tint to it because I want to have that dark, that dark richness to it. And of course, you know, he's got that blue tie. So let me go ahead and color his tie while I'm at it. I think while I'm at it, let me kind of start coloring in like some of the darker areas. So like for his nose, let me color in his nose while I'm at it. And I know, because what else I was going to mention? But I think when I do my start working on the thing for my character Gino for the cowboy type deal, because I got a lot of different ideas on what I want to do with story, but I decided, you know, like if I wanted to have it, I want to be like a short story, or I want it to be like an ongoing series, and even then I decide how many characters I want to have. Like right now, I'm just kind of like just brainstorming different ideas on where I kind of really want to go with the story. Even then, it's like how fast and loose I want to do it, because even though, you know, it's more like a western comedy type of deal, I'm deciding like, do I want to actually, you know, be set in the Wild West, which kind of going with, do I want to be set in the Wild West? Do I want to be set in more of an alternate universe? Do I want to be a space western? Because I've seen a few space westerns. I'm thinking, do I want to do that? So there's a lot of different ideas, you know. I'm just kind of bouncing around to try to see, you know, like which will probably work best for the story that I want to tell. Let me just kind of start shading, you know, his pant legs. And of course, his vest, you know, that's gonna be like that's gonna be a little darker. He's got to darken just a bit more. And of course, I'm going to go back over the lines I made later on too, just kind of bring those out, because that is one thing that will tend to happen if we're using pens like this. Like, you wouldn't have kind of cut right some of the lines that you made. I think I have a little bit of opening just peeking out since it's kind of pressed against, you know, his vest. Let me see something. Let me see. I think his boots are kind of dark too. Yeah, that they are. Because his boots are fairly dark. But yeah, you're not allowed. But yeah, I think it was like, yeah, if you're really having like this, like Timon's Bed's a good show. Of course, Looney Tunes, SpongeBob, most definitely. I know for me, I think whenever because even though I don't really do much writing, I know for a while, like back when I was doing like fanfic stories, like because I used to do a lot of like fanfics, like for like say for Animaniacs. I think that's the show I tended to like for writing, because like that was kind of one of those shows, kind of like Looney Tunes, where it was fun. They could be silly and funny, but they could also be very clever as well. And so that was another one of those shows I used as inspiration for my writing. So I remember what I would do is that like even like, and I did this a lot more, especially not only my fest, but also I think when that show it had briefly because it had a brief revival because it was on the hub. It was on the hub channel, and that was before it got changed into the Hasbro network. You know, they had briefly kind of revived. You know, because this is before the reboot. This was like a good couple of years before the reboot. They had they started airing the show on the hub, and it was pretty cool because, you know, like that was probably the first time in years I'd ever seen on television, and a lot of the episodes I either hadn't seen in years, or it was the first time I'd seen them, you know, at all. Because see, I also used to catching them on reruns on when they were on Cartoon Network, and these are probably like say like late at night, and occasionally sometimes I would see it on Nickelodeon as well. I think and Tiny Toons, which was another show they'd also revitalized on the hub as well. But I remember like I would watch after we watched the episodes, I would kind of study, I would kind of study them and see, how the characters would interact with each other, see how they would joke around with each other, cause that's always kind of a challenge, true, like really like and because normally whenever I try to write, like comedic scenes, like what I do is I always try to like look and see what type of character like the character is like. If it's a character is they're very snarky, or are they very easygoing, or they're very angry. I try to see what type of character they are, and usually like even once you have a good personality down, it gets easier to kind of write like dialogue for them. Aaron saw me chat about on YouTube. Yeah, I think I remember that because they had a couple of this show because it was like they broke cut show breast. It was that, it was Tiny Toons, but also the time they were airing a lot of other shows because they get Dan Versus that was on there for a good bit. That was My Little Pony, that was on there too. Of course, once that show really took off, they started having other like show that thing was like little. I think Pound Puppies reboot. There's a couple of other shows that are owned by Hasbro because that's when it became the Hasbro network. Because a lot of the shows they started airing were basically just like shows based on properties by Hasbro. And then of course later on down the line, Hasbro ended up kind of going defunct. But it was cool, like getting a chance to kind of like see like all those shows, especially that show, on TV again for the first time in years. And of course, now you can see it because I think it's still. I want to say it's still on Hulu. And I take that back. I think only the reboot's still on Hulu, but the original show was on Hulu for a while too. Then of course, there's other sites you can go around, other sites online where you can go and actually find places where you watch it. Paul and Joe had handed it. Yeah. Oh yeah, and then Tiny Toons, I definitely remember that because I remember The thing is, I remember catching Tiny Toons more on Nickelodeon than they did on Cartoon Network because I remember like that was one of. Because I remember back when I was really little when I used to watch Nick Jr. I remember Tiny Toons, it would be one of the very first shows that they would start playing like once they switched over from the Nick Jr. block to the Nickelodeon block. Yeah, I vividly remember that show, like Buster and Babs. And the thing is, I haven't seen the the reboot yet. I've heard it's actually like pretty good, even though they did change a lot of, apparently changed a lot of things, from the original show. Yeah, I've seen a little Pet Shop show. I've seen a little bit, but I remember it being pretty fun. Although I haven't even seen the older show, if there was an older show to begin with. Yeah, because Little's Pet Shop, that was one. What was another one they had? And that Pound Puppies, that was another one. I think there was. I could have sworn there was one other like Hasbro related show they had on there too. I cannot. I don't know why first I cannot remember like the name right now. Yeah, and it was, and for the brief while they had all that, it was pretty neat because it was something different. And of course, when it makes a Pet Shop. Oh, really? I had no idea about that. Because in fact, let me look that up real quick. I'm sorry, I'm just kind of going back and forth like this, but now it's got me looking up stuff that I didn't even know about. Little Pet Shops. As brought on Discovery Family. That's right, because I remember that before that. I think it was. That's right, because before that they did, it was called the Discovery and Family Channel, because they used to have other shows on there too. Well, I'm looking at. Also, they did a lot of different shows back then. Bree McNeil, with husband Trevor McNeil. Alexander from Stuff Hills, Paul and Joe at the end of it. So was this Julie? It was Julie Cahill and Tim Cahill. That was their names. Yeah, I think I see it. Oh, so they did a lot of different shows together. I had no idea they did all that. Because they did that. My Gym Partner's a Monkey. Raspberries are going orange. Oh, so they both worked. Okay, so they worked on Sebastian Tweed's Mysteries, Hysteria, Baby Looney Tunes, Crypto. Oh, wow. Okay, so they did a lot more. So we did a lot of different shows on here. Oh. That's so funny. It's like all these years that you never realized like certain people had a hand on different shows. That looks pretty good. So now that I got that. Let me see. What else can I add? And even though his top hair is brown, I'm just gonna go over a little gray to kind of darken it up just a bit more. Almost forgot, some of his fame, because he still has like those teeth that come out. Ooh, I almost forgot that. Shows I remember. Yeah, I remember that too. I'm trying to think. Did it ever end? Cause it seemed like that. Was one of those shows that just seemed to go on forever. Cause it's like it went on for seasons. Then there was a reboot. No, not a reboot. Then there was a new series. Then they had that movie. It seemed like it was one of those that just seemed to go. I just seemed to go on forever. Yeah, I had a lot of different shows that finally were growing up. Tiny Toon was definitely one of them. I know for that speaker station for Nick Jr. I remember that my favorite show was often Blue's Clues. That now when it came to Nick Jr., that was my personal favorite show, like from that era. And in fact, I wouldn't be surprised, if that was probably one of my first that awakened my interest in art. Because one thing that I used to remember on Blue's Clues, you remember Steve, you have that handy dandy notebook, so he would draw out, different clues in his notebook. And I remember as a kid, as I would kind of watch the show, sometimes I had my pen and paper with me, and I would draw out, like the shapes, and the objects he was doing, like with him. And it was always just a great show. I remember that was another show that I used to always enjoy. Of course, that of course the PBS Kids, and of course with Arthur, the PBS Bookworm Bunch. Now, what's funny with PBS Bookworm Bunch, that was more like a Saturday afternoon block that they used to play, and I think that was mainly shows based on various book series. And in that one, I think it was because what different ones they had? They had one on George Shrinks, Corduroy, which was based on books. That's the only one. I think of all those series that were based on books, Corduroy I think was the only one I was familiar with. The only one I remember reading all those years ago. It was that one. Seven Little Monsters. That was my personal favorite from that show. They had that. Margaret Tap Dancing Horse, and I believe that was it, at least from what I remember. I heard in other places where they had beers where they had Flintstones as well, which to me just seemed really odd, because you had all these other kids shows that were very much based around series based on books. Then you had Flintstones, while popular on the kids, it was a much older show and sometimes slated for an older audience. Okay, I think this is looking pretty good. So now, let me start going in with some brown. Arthur, remember him? I used to love that show. Clifford, definitely loved that show. I remember that and the movie. Dragon Tales, oh, I love Dragon Tales. That was fantastic. Sesame Street, Barney, Friends, of course that. Teletubbies, like that. Zoom. Fun thing about Zoom. Back when that show came out, we actually had the crew for that show. They actually came and filmed this segment over at my school. They did it at my school, but they also did it at my sister's middle school too. And I remember we got a chance to see it live when they first premiered it. Yeah, that was pretty cool. My Miguel, Postcards and Buster. Cyber Chase. I think it's an underrated show, but I remember that's probably one of the few shows that I watched growing up that where I actually liked math. Pulls out George Strings. Yeah, because Clifford Big, because I remember the movie when it came out, it really didn't do all that well back when it came out. It was kind of a flop. I don't think not too many people knew about it, because I think I didn't really know about it until it was already out. But it was surprising, at least I checked last when I last watched it. It was actually a really fun movie. And it was kind of a nice class way to end off the show, because it was like the series finale. And of course, unfortunately, it would be the very last time John Ritter, who voiced Clifford, I think he ended up passing away before the movie came out. But he really did a great job of, yeah, but he did a really great job, like voicing Clifford, especially with him being known for always adding a lot of warmth and adding a lot of life into like the characters he did. Because like for those younger folks out there, he was an actor on the star on like Three's Company. But like what's funny is like, cause even though he was more one for that, like Clifford's really what I know him a lot more from. I used to remember like getting home from school, like that was one of the shows I would watch. Clifford, that was one. Cyber Chase, that was another good one too. Of course, because I had two big names. Of course, Christopher Lloyd did Hacker. Gilbert Gottfried, the late Gilbert Gottfried, he did Digit. What was another good one? What's another good one on top of my head? Now, Zaboomafoo, that was another one I used to love. That was with the Kratz brothers. Because I think they had two shows. Because I know Zaboomafoo, that was a big one they had, where they had that lemur. They had to work around his death with 8 simple rules of it. Oh, really? I didn't even know that. I'm trying to remember, because I know he had passed before the movie. He had passed before like the movie came out. Because let me look that up. It was 2003. Oh, it was early. For some reason, I thought it was 2004. DeviantArt Response and Legacy. Attack. Test pain just hit. Would be worsen. I'm just kind of looking him up. "18 Simple Rules for Dave Daniel's Daughter." Okay, I think I do vaguely remember hearing about this show. Okay, because I knew he'd been in different sitcoms over the years. I forgot he was in that one like right around time of his passing. Be the Creature, Wildcrats. I think Wildcrats is probably what they're most well known for nowadays. But I did remember hearing about Be the Creature. I very remember hearing about that. But Zaboomafoo, that was the one that I was the most feared. That's the one I definitely remember growing up. I think honestly, even to this day, I still have a fondness for animals. I think it's just like through them, because they made learning about animals exciting. They made it fun. So I think we go ahead with some tan. Let me just kind of like this is like a warmer color. Oh yeah, I would love to meet them too, because they seem like really chill. Guys. I think even on camera, like the way they kind of interact, especially when I saw them on Zoom, they seem like really energetic, like really chill guys. For some reason, I could picture them being kind of like Steve Irwin, because I've heard Steve Irwin was apparently known for being a pretty chill guy. Everybody's power too. Oh yeah, most definitely. And oh yeah, speaking of Maurice LaMarche, so I know you probably already mentioned before. So the con, Coachella Con, it went fantastic. I really had a wonderful time getting a chance to meet all those guys. And in this case, Maurice LaMarche, I remember I think when I handed him off the picture that I did, I had him sign it. In fact, I think I got it on right here. Give me just one moment. Let me see. Do I have it on hand? I should have it. Give me just one moment. Give me just one. Here we go. I was Pre de Lazon on YouTube seeing Dance of Love. Oh, that's neat. Yeah, I have to give that. I'll have to check that out. I've heard it's really wonderful. But when I went to see March of March, of course I saw the picture. So he actually kind of said this, in the Brain's voice. Reggie, are you pondering? I'm pondering. And then of course I ended up kind of quoting something that Pinky would say. Pinky would say, I think, what did I say? I think it says, I don't know, Brain, but Jerry got corner. I don't care. Then why does he do it? And I think he said that is a wonderful answer, Pinky. So it was. Yeah, so it was really cool getting a chance to get a chance to meet him. I kind of almost wish I did this earlier, maybe last year, because I figure if I did this, I could have gotten Rob Paulson to sign it when I went to go see him last year, and then got Maurice to sign it too. But I figured, like one of these days, if there's ever a convention where they're both together, I might do something like that just for them, because I had did that. If I met Sandy Fox, I shared 3 checks she did on Jay the Jet Plane, Snuffy, and Tuffy. Oh, she did more. Oh, she did all those main characters. For the reason because I've heard their name. I knew she had voice acting on that show. I didn't realize she did that many. Because they had a few characters. I think it was her. I think the late Mary Kay Bergman. I think she did JJ, if I remember right. In fact, let me look that up real quick. Just said there's on characters on Jada Jet Plane. Give me just one moment. Oh yeah, Snuffy, Sandy Fox, Tracy, Sandy Fox. Also, a lot of different voice actors I didn't realize were on here. Yeah, just JJ with Mary Kay Bergman, Tracy, Gina Risby, then Sandy Fox, Sandy Fox. So Sandy, she did a lot of different characters. I had no idea. Debbie Derryberry, I recognize her. I forgot she was on this show. Her, Josh Keaton, Michael Donovan. Oh wow, because it's been years I've seen that show. I didn't think they were on there. Oh, that's right. She did take over after she had passed. Yeah, for Mary Kay, rest in peace. Because of course, Mary Kay, of course, she did JJ. Of course, she did most characters on South Park. I know for me, I'm more familiar with what she did. Her voice work for Daphne in the 90s, because she had voiced her, I think, when they did Zombie Island. I think she did Zombie, I think, in Alien Invaders. Is, of course, the original voice for Timmy Turner from Oh Yeah cartoons. That's so weird. Like, so many voices I knew were on this show, I had completely forgot were on here. But it's been years, since I've seen it. But I'm trying to think, what was another show that I used to really enjoy seeing on there? Because see, now you got me talking these shows, and now I'm just thinking of all these other shows. Now this is just bring a lot of things back. Because I know when it came to catching shows on Saturday morning, PBS Book and Bunch, that was kind of the one I used to always like to watch. And there were other ones too, because I know one Saturday morning ABC, I used to catch that every now and then, because of course I think sometimes they would air Timon and Pumbaa. They had Lloyd in Space. They had Doug, and this was the version where it was no longer Nickelodeon, it was on Disney. But I remember not really caring for the Disney version as much as the original Nickelodeon one. I don't know. I wouldn't say it was bad or anything like that, but just something about it, it just didn't really catch our interest as much as the original series did. But actually, I'm trying to remember. Was the original creator involved in that version? I don't think he was. In fact, let me look and see. Let me see. Original run. Jenkins. Development. DC acquisition. They recouped series. Claiming the company always breaking their budget. Separate series. They said they could be quirkier or better. That's right. I think he had less involvement in the Disney version. Because I remember catching that, and occasionally, like I caught WB. I think when I finally got watching WB, that's when a lot of the old stories start being phased out. Because of course, for me, growing up when I watched cartoons, like usually I kind of stuck to like the holy trifecta when it came to, of course you had Cartoon Network, you had Nickelodeon, you had Disney Channel. Those are like the main ones I usually stuck to. So when it came to look up other like channels, like that really didn't happen until much later, until like those main channels started changing up. So of course that when those shows started changing, of course that's when I checked out Disney Channel. That's when I checked out Toon Disney. That's when I checked out what WBC, what they had to offer. Yeah, so this is looking pretty good. Let me go check on something for a brief moment. I'll be right back. Hang on. Alright, I'm back. So I think we're almost gonna be done with here. So now I'm just kind of like fine tuning our character down here. Just fine tuning Rowan, making sure I'm getting his rugged but rough exterior, his rugged and regal exterior. I'm liking how it turns out, because I was concerned it looked a little too much like Henry, because I didn't want to look exactly like Henry. Because since he's a very different character, because since his character has a very different demeanor compared to him, I want his design to look a little bit different. Because one issue I tend to sometimes have them from drawing a character, like sometimes they tend to start looking the same. So I just want to make sure, like from a visual perspective, they all have a look to them that's very specific, like for their character. That's looking pretty good. That's looking all right. I think I will use that light blue. What happened to that other Oh, here we go. I had another pen I was using. I think I'll use this light blue over here to kind of go over, its tie to kind of bring it up, because I know the dark blue, it kind of like a purplish tint to it. That was that. Let me just kind of use the contour tip of his shoes. I think I'll add these little kind of scuff marks here. Because I figured with him, even though he's very good fella, he is kind of a rugged kind of guy. So he's definitely going to be a little bit rough around the edges. So this is looking good. Alright, so before I show you some of the other stuff that I got going on, I think we're just about done with this one. So this is going to be our entry for day 4. Day 4, and my prompt word for today was detective. Yes, I hope Spiffy So when Spiffy sees this, I hope he really likes it. This was my first time actually kind of drawing him. So yeah, but I have a feeling he'll like it. I have a feeling he'll like it. So that's coming up to it. So before I go off this list, let me kind of show you some of the other stuff from the con. So let me just kind of show you just a little bit of stuff from the thing. So give me just one moment. So of course, that's thing from release from March from Pinky. That's one of a comic, one of these new like indie comics, I had found. Hey, thanks, Shay. This was from Jason Douglas. He voiced Beers from Dragon Ball Z Super. That's kind of a thing now. I've kind of gotten to kind of start checking out a little bit more anime now. Of course, Dragon Ball Z always I've liked even back then. This was from Fred Tatascore. He did Farmer Jim on that show. Like some of you were here for like the last streams I did. I always drew this live in color pencil, so I did a copy, and he wrote his response, in color pencil. He really loved it. In fact, I remember he even tried to recite and kind of wrote this in the voice of like Farmer Jim. So that meant a lot. And of course, this was from Brent Forrester. Roosevelt Brent Forrester, he was one of the writers on some. He wrote for them, I think for between like season 6 through 8. A lot of the Homer Palooza, that was kind of one of the ones he personally worked on. There was that. There was Patricia Patch. So she was one of the original like girls who voiced Peppermint Patty. She did her back in the 70s. She was I think she was the 6th girl to voice Peppermint Patty. There have been different other ones too. And those pretty much what I ended up doing for that one. Yeah. But it was really fun because they had a lot of different things. Because a lot of voice actors, comic book creators, like artists. They had different vendors, comic book sellers. Yeah, I think for sure. That thing where you can repair your cosplay. Like speaking of cosplay, this time around going to Lupin the Fur. This time around I decided to do the Lupin fit again, but this time I had to go with the red jacket this time, so that's what I ended up doing. But yeah, it was really fun. It was a really fun convention. Of course, I didn't have trouble parking this time because like I ended up having to get a hotel that was I'd say it was probably about 15 minutes away. Really like 20 minutes away from the location. If there was no traffic, but it wasn't that bad at all because I was able to get in. I was able to park just fine. And yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. I'm definitely looking forward to actually going again and seeing what they have on the schedule this time. And also, I think compared to because see here in Atlanta, we have the cons here too because we have them like Dragon Con, we got MomoCon, we got Anime Con Atlanta. But think about it, like here, like I know I've mentioned this before in some of the other streams that even the cons here are here and they're bigger. The problem is I think when they tend to be a lot more bigger, they tend to be a lot busier. They're a lot more crowded. And not able to be, as intimate, like with the people that you meet. Because of course when you meet certain people, like you want to get a chance to really like talk to them, get to kind of know them, and really kind of connect with them too, versus, like if you're going to like a big where if you want to see this famous person but you can only see them at a panel, you gotta make sure you go to this panel early or else it'll be sold out very quick. Like say for example, for DragCon we had both Christopher Lloyd and William Shatner came in. And they both had their own like big panels, and I remember I think when I passed by everywhere I was supposed to have it, they had a huge line just to get in for the thing. I think you had to get there in advance, or else the whole area it would sell out. Whereas here at Chattanooga Comic Con, since it's a much smaller con, it's also in Chattanooga, a smaller city anyway. You really didn't have like that issue. So it's definitely something I'm looking forward to doing, again, in the near future. And alright, so guys, I think that's all I can do, like, for this guy right here. So this is Rowan, our Rugged Detective, for day 4 for Drawtober. So I appreciate all you guys that kind of dropped in for today's stream. I'm glad I was able to kind of drop in. Let me at least see it so you can see it better. I'm glad to be a chance to kind of really, like, work on this guy. Definitely look forward to again try to draw him again in the near future, and I hope to see you all again in the near future. Hopefully, best case scenario, I might be able to try to do another one tomorrow. Until then, I'll talk to you guys later.